want to welcome you. My name is Lynn Crowley, and I'm the Executive Director of the Multicultural Service Center and the co-chair for Asian Pacific Islanders Coalition South Puget Sound chapter. My co-chair should be joining us shortly, if not already here. I just wanted to welcome all of you for joining us. We hope that you will treat us as a partner as we want to continue our quest to help build a welcoming community for all of us in the Swenson and the South Sound area. We are very happy that Deputy Assistant Director of the Office of Economic Development and Competitiveness from the Department of Commerce, Keith Swenson, is here joining us, who will help answer some questions, and that our communication partners, the DH staff, Annie and Esther, are also here, who are going to help, share some more information about what their current work. Since we know everyone is busy, so we don't want to necessarily take time right now to, introduce everyone. But I wanted to just ask if you could please put down your name and your association in the chat, so that way people will get to know who are here, and that if they like to contact you later, they can do so. So at the end of the session, if we have time, we may be able to do some exchanges for future, more in-depth, introductions about this program if it's necessary. Okay, so I just want to take the opportunity to say welcome. And we are going to have 4 segments. We are going to introduce the program today. Then we will do pre-application walkthrough to show you how you can actually apply for this Flex Fund program. And then Keith is going to help discuss about why the program was started and how many successes have been there already. And then we will do some question and answer session. Does that sound okay to everyone? All right. So if you are not going to be speaking, feel free to go ahead and keep yourself muted. But if you are ready to talk later, you are certainly welcome to just unmute yourself. And if I may go ahead and introduce my presenter, which is Kelsey. And Kelsey, if you are ready, go ahead and put your slide together, and we will start from here.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. And just so everyone knows, I'm in a library right now, so I might have to talk a little quiet. But let me know if you can't hear me. Start here. Okay, let's see. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah,
Looks
like
good.
Lynn said, I'm going to be just going over some of the basics of the Small Business Flex Fund. There we go. So the Small Business Flex Fund is a simple, low-interest, flexible loan. We're supported by the Washington State Department of Commerce, and the fund helps small businesses and nonprofits access the financial support that they need. Let's see. So we know that the pandemic has impacted all of our communities, but it's especially hard hit our smallest businesses and nonprofits. So this loan program is designed to help you access the funds that you need at a competitive rate to bounce back stronger than ever. So applying is simple. These are some of the eligibility. So you need fewer than 50 employees, an average or annual revenue of less than $3 million, and have experienced a direct economic hardship due to COVID. And in terms of loans, you can borrow up to $150,000. And then for small businesses, you have a 4% interest rate, and for nonprofits, a 3% interest rate. And there's no fees, only interest-only payments for the first year. And then you have 60 months or 5 years for the loan term. And let me move this. And yeah, so the loan use is flexible. You can really use it for anything related to your business or nonprofit. So you can do payroll, utilities, and rent, everything like that. Let's see. Yes, this is just the information again. So whether you're like a childcare center, a local farm, a restaurant, or nonprofit, you can be eligible for this loan. And here again is some more information. You have to have employee 50 or fewer full-time equivalent employees, have experienced economic disruption due to COVID-19, and you have to have been in operation since January 2019. Oops, sorry, far away. There we go. And then, so to apply, you're going to need a few documents. So first, you're going to need your most recently filed tax returns, some bank statements. If you are a business or nonprofit, some information regarding your owner, an executed attestation form. Let's see, a description about how COVID-19 has impacted your business or organization, some legal documents about your formation, personal guarantee, but that's only for businesses. And then depending on who your community lender is, they might require some other documentation, but they'll let you know at the time of the application. And I think, let's see. Lynn, was I gonna go through the pre-application process, or is that something else?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so everyone, so Lynn, I'm not sure if you can put it in the chat, but this is, you go to smallbusinessflexfund.org, and this will let you do the pre-application process. So I took some screenshots, I went through it. So once you go to that website, you're going to be taken to the home page, and then you can go to apply now. And then you're going to be taken to this page, and it's just going to ask you how much you want to borrow. So you can borrow up to $150,000. And then it's going to ask you when you need the money by, so you can do within today, within a couple of weeks, and within 1 to 2 months. Let's see, so this is just talking a little bit about your business or nonprofit. So you're going to have to put the name in, what type of business you have, what industry it is, and then how long you've been in business. Oh, and again, you have to have been in business for at least 1 year since 2019. And then some more information about your business. You're going to put the address in. Your main office or headquarters have to have been located in Washington to be eligible for this loan. Some contact information. What your total revenue was last year. So again, your annual revenue had to have been less than 3 million per year. And then if you had earned a profit in 2019, and then what was your annual net profit from that? And then this is going to be asking about specifically about your business, if you how many employees you have, and if you've ever had a prior bankruptcy. And this is talking about the collateral to support the loan. You don't have to have any specific collateral to be eligible, but it might help you be approved. And then this is talking about this current year, how much revenue you expect to make. If you have a business plan. Oh yes, and then if your business is owned by women, POC, veterans, and or LGBTQI identifying people. And then the next one is just going to ask to identify which ones there. And then this is the last step. I'm just talking about your personal credit score. And then at the very end, it's going to tell you which loans you can are eligible for. Because I was doing it just as a researcher, it says there's none available, but it should show some here. And then on the left-hand corner here, it's going to show match factors, and the ones in red are why we're not eligible for any here. But when you apply, you should see which lenders you are applicable with. And I think this is my last slide. Just a little bit more information. Once you submit this pre-application process, you can be matched with a local community-based lender, and then that should happen within 2 to 4 weeks, and they reach out to you to collect some additional required documentation. And I think that is the last part of my section here.
Great. Thank you so much, Kelsey. So the next person I'd like to go ahead bring back is Keith, who, as I said, is joining us today from Department of Commerce. And he is going to share a little bit more about the program and how it got started and how it is doing so far. So Keith, please.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. I really, first and foremost, I want to thank everyone here for the time. I really appreciate everyone carving out a little bit of their day to learn a little bit more about this. I sure hope it's helpful to everyone. Um, but as Lynn said, yeah, the Small Business Flex Fund was a program developed out of the CARES Fund Act, this federal funding that was first distributed when the crisis was in kind of its infancy, right? That first 6 to 8 months of the pandemic. And one of the conversations and feedback loops we were receiving from small business around the state were, hey, there's a lot of small dollar grants out there, but we need access to capital, right? And so the governor put a charge to Commerce to seed $30 million of federal CARES funding to initiate a small business loan program, which is named the Small Business Flex Fund, as you can tell. We were also charged with scaling that dollar up. We have a goal of $100 million capital fund. We are close to getting to 100 million. I think we're only about 10 shy. So our fundraising and partnerships in the private sector have gone fairly well. We have great partners that have committed funds to this endeavor, including like Heritage Bank and others that have committed dollars to us. I'm thinking of JP Morgan Chase as well. And sorry, Annie could probably fill in some of these too. I'm forgetting for some reason. I apologize. But at the end of the day, we're getting close to our capitalization goal of $100 million. To date, we've been able to distribute or funded amounts. This is the dollar amount of actual loans going out to the community. It's 30 million and change. There's $30,131,000 of loan funding has gone out into the communities and has funded 364 small business loans. So we are, we're moving along, but there's a sizable still portion of capital funding available. A couple key high points that I wanted to mention, if I could, and I have the benefit of getting some questions directed towards me before this meeting started, is, because this was funded with CARES Act dollars, there is a requirement for businesses, small businesses and nonprofits to show COVID impact. And I know in this environment, every single business and nonprofit's been impacted. So I didn't want that to be perceived as a barrier. It is really, something that can be worked with the CDFIs when you get matched with one. If there's any more questions to kind of fill that piece out, you can do that. Impact can be broad, and also you'll notice, hey, having positive revenue in a pandemic does not mean you're not affected by COVID, right? So a positive revenue is not a disqualifier for this kind of lending program for sure. So I wanted to kind of highlight a couple of those for y'all. First, I get a lot of questions about startups. I wanted to clarify for the small business community, just to emphasize, and Kelsey, you did a great job. Thank you so much for running through those slides. You need to be in a established business for a year to the application date. So if I apply today, I have to be in a business. My business entity needs to be around at least 1 year's time. And again, so that question I get a lot about on the startup front, this is not a fund designed to support new businesses that are launching right now. Because if we remember, at the time this was developed, it was really targeted specifically to help those businesses going through the pandemic impact when it first kind of hit, right? So we had a lot of closures, shutdowns. So it was really trying to get and capital resources to those businesses directly affected. So I will say that we are working on some future program and funding from the federal treasury, for example, that they have a state small business credit initiative that the Department of Commerce applied for. where it's much more flexible in the use of funds. And I'm sure we're going to try to get some products together that will be available for startups. But to date, this current program is not one of those. And Lynn, I'd love to at some point, maybe in the summer when those get created, I love the opportunity to talk about those as well, because we're really truly trying to build out a selection of products to help businesses in whatever stage they are in their growth cycle, whether you're a startup or you've been a business around for a long time. And we all know the last year or two, the financials have been a little wonky. So being able to, get access to capital is still super important. I think Kelsey mentioned this, the how long does the process take and what you need. I think she outlined very well of what CDFIs will ask when you're matched with a lender. I will say this is a loan that requires underwriting. So some lenders have different, requirements than others. They are all partners with this fund with the eye of being a low barrier access loan fund. So when you see that, when we walk through the portal, for example, none of those questions, save one, and I'll get to it, will disqualify you, right? None of those questions, there's no wrong or right answer. It's truly trying to get an understanding of what the business profile is to match that business with a CDFI best positioned to help. Some CDFIs really master like a small business, like a micro loan, right? Something like $5,000, $10,000. Others are well positioned geographically to support businesses in the King County area or the Vancouver County area or Tri-Cities or whatnot, right? So it's really trying to get an understanding of the position of the business. The only one in there that I see that can really disqualify is actually there's two: the employee number, because that's trying to target to the small businesses, and also revenue number of over $3 million. Because again, the intent here is to really drive access for the small businesses and within our communities. I did want to mention, there's a question I had early on about technical support. What I think is really dynamic about the Flex Fund is when a business goes through, it fills out a profile, they match with a CDFI. If there are corresponding technical assistance, support programs needed, maybe it's, language assistance or business planning assistance or other professional services. We have partnered with other TA nonprofits and entities around the state to help this fund out. And it ranges from anywhere. We have a great partnership with SBDCs, with WIDA, Sister Sky is an example, 501 Commons, the Center for Inclusive Entrepreneurship are just some of the examples of some of these organizations. So there are great opportunities for businesses that just, maybe they don't know the answers to all those questions. They just do their best to answer them. What's really critical is, and reason why the state wanted to partner with CDFIs or community development financial institutions, is their approach to small business, which is consultative, right? That's why it takes 2 to 4 weeks. They'll reach out. They really want to work with, talk with the business owner, really understand their situation. Even some businesses that, through their process realize, hey, maybe debt on the books right now isn't right. They want to maintain that relationship to help when it is right. Or if there's, an area of growth that needs to happen for the business, their mission statement is to really stick with our community, small businesses, to really help them, move forward and get access to capital. So having a robust TA partnership with this fund was very important to us. And then I see a couple of questions that I had come up to me about like other funding sources. I already touched on the startup funds, but also emergency grants, for example, and relief grants. There's two, points I want to touch on here. There will be, through the state, as I mentioned, through the federal treasury, other programs that will be in development. We actually submitted an application to Treasury. The state of Washington's allocated from the federal coffers, if you will, $163 million in this endeavor. We're hoping to get some of that programming up and running by the summertime, so I'll be able to share more products. At this time, the Flex Fund is fairly all we have on the statewide level, to be very honest with you. But it is designed in a way that I think has been immensely successful in a sense of like being a low barrier access point for businesses that do need some assistance. The other is some emergency relief grants. There is a Working Washington, we're up to a 5 version now. It's currently in the legislature in the state right now to kind of get some more definitions around the businesses that's allowed to serve. And we're hoping that the legislature broadens out those use of funds so we can make it available to more, but we will understand more about how we can develop that program in the coming months, certainly by the close of this session next month. And so we're probably looking at like a grant round going out to the community, probably early summer, something around that time. So there is some of that grant funding coming down. And I just want to emphasize one more time too, that, you know, this is a debt product, right? So it's not a grant. There is an expectation of having it be paid back, because the idea around a revolving loan fund is that we can take, you know, relatively small number of money, $100 million, and get that recycled back into the community and help the community and help other businesses in our communities get access to. There's no plans for it to be forgiven. So unlike some of the federal loan programs that were being turned into forgivable loans, this is not one of those. So we want to be very transparent and clear with our community to know this is a debt product. However, we wanted to make sure that when developing it, it has the least you know, impact on the business owner to really be strategic. This is why it has that 12-month principal deferment. So it's only interest. The fund takes care of like the fees and whatnot that traditionally come with loans. So just for behind the scenes, so you know, there are fees, but it just gets paid by the fund and not the business. So all those fees generally help with lending capacity, for example. And so the capacity builder is still there for like the CDFIs, the service loans, and to help our community. But we wanted to ensure that the business and the business owner is not feeling that impact. So I think, you know, I'm open for more questions, but that's my kind of run of show, Lynn. If there's anything else or more, I'd be happy to bring as much clarity as I can.
Thank you so much, Keith. I was going to say, I believe Anne and Esther was going to also share a little bit about their current work. And also, if there's more questions from anyone here, feel free to go ahead, unmute yourself after Annie and Esther's presentation, and then we will be able to do a little bit answer and question and answer session. Okay, so Annie and Esther, do you like to introduce yourself really quick first, and then we can go ahead and start taking people's questions. And I see that some people's hands are already up, so I'm going to take it as we go in that order, if that's okay. But go ahead, Esther, Annie.
So do you want to go first?
Yeah, feel free.
Okay, I can just jump in. Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Annie Blake-Burke, and I've been really working closely with Keith and the rest of the Small Business Flex Fund team to help increase awareness of this program in the various communities across our state. Really kind of on the communication side of things, hoping to get as many loans into the hands of small businesses as possible. And Esther will introduce herself as well. She's my colleague, and we've been working closely together.
Hi, yeah, my name is Esther, and I work with Annie on just getting the word out there about this program. And we work like with organizations like Multicultural Center, Lynn's organization, just to partner with them to help reach communities across Washington.
Great, thank you. So I see a hand by Jasmine. You want to go first, please?
Sure. Thank you, Lynn, and thank you to all the presenters today. Really appreciate your taking the time to share this information. The first one was really, could we get the slide deck because there was, or if it's available online, just the URL, and then we can download it from there.
Yes.
Yeah.
We will definitely share the slide deck with all of the people who have signed up for this session today. So
Awesome.
you will receive that. Thank you.
Keith, you had mentioned about that other programs are going to get created over a period of time as the legislature passes those, or there are new initiatives that come up. Is there an email list that we can sign up for in order to get information about those programs?
Yeah, great question. So an amazing resource that everyone should probably have in their ribbon on the top of their browser should be the Commerce website. And in the Commerce website, there's support for small businesses. And during this conversation, I'll try to drop that in the chat here. And we routinely update any new programming or programs throughout Commerce that we are engaged in, which usually are any of the statewide initiatives or federal initiatives. And so all those programs that I mentioned through the federal treasury would be highlighted there too. And it launches through there, and it's a great resource to sign up also for. The Department of Commerce has a distribution list. So when you jump on that site, it'll ask you, would you like to be part of our email distribution? Please say yes, and you will get the most updated information as we even have it too. It gets launched out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great question though. Yep.
Thanks. I have a bunch, but I'm going to defer to others first because I don't have too much time. Please.
Okay. Sure. Maybe we will have Krisha ask her question, then we can come back to you, Jasmine, and then anyone else who may have other question. And I also have gotten a note from one of you already saying if applicants have limited English ability, will they be having any opportunities to get help? So I'm going to put it in the chat to share with all of you that the lenders whose ventures and business impact Northwest, they are able to kind of help provide support in other languages other than English. So I just want to make sure you know that. But Krisha, please ask your question.
So it says for like the Flex Fund, the nonprofits organization gets like 3% interest rate, while the small business gets 4%. Is there like a specific reason why one gets like 3% or 4%? Yeah.
Sure. That's a great question. At the end of the day, and I'm trying to remember which one's which. Annie, if you can remind me, I think.
Four is business. The higher is the business.
Essentially, it comes down to the underwriting process and the level of risk from the lender. Nonprofits carry a different category than businesses do. Some businesses tend to be more risky, or nonprofits have like backing, for example, and different kind of capital funding. So they might have like an endowment or something else that helps underwrite a lot of their activities, which tends to be a less of a, maybe this is the wrong word, but just a different underwriting criteria that gives them a different, interest rate.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah. Do we have other questions from folks here? If you prefer to ask the questions in the chat, you can also do so too.
Oh, I have a question.
Okay, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maddie. I haven't gotten a chance to introduce myself. I use she, her pronouns, and I've been helping Krisha this past week for her internship project. As a Tagalog translator, we've been trying to seek out small Filipino businesses about this Flex Fund program. So my question is, it says that the loan is low interest. So I was wondering, how does it differentiate, or how does it compare to other loan programs, and like what's the average interest rate?
Sure. That's a great question. I think in general scale, the 3 and 4% is some of the lowest you'll find in the industry right now, if not the lowest. And I have to give you a bit of a range, Maddie. This is a great question because it does depend on the institution, right? So some institutions just naturally have a higher interest rate because they take on riskier, loans, and others don't, depending on the size of the institution and their level of being able to manage essentially default rates, right? So we've seen anywhere from like 7, 8, 9%, all the way up to 15, 16, 17% across the industry on the lending side. And I'll say, I'll be a little bit anecdotal, so I apologize for that. But some of the roundtables that we've been engaged with, a lot of businesses are finding that lenders, they might be flush with lending capital, but getting access to that is really difficult because of the, I used the term before, it's very technical, the wonkiness of our revenue streams in our businesses, right? And so banks like to have predictability the best they can on revenue streams, right? And what the pandemic has done has created a up and down, unpredictable market on that front, and then it's reflected in interest rates. So they tend to increase those with higher the risk, higher their interest, because they're assuming a greater loss. So people that basically can't pay back their loans, and so in order to cover those losses to fund more, they do higher rates, right? So with the state funding, the $30 million that the governor put through for this, we've basically taken the risk away from the lender. I'm not going to say completely, but significantly enough to where we can withstand a higher default rate, right? And that the loss is absorbed by the federal money and not the private capital money or the investor money to help get more capital out, right? So that's why, a little more behind your question, a little bit of the why and how we're able to achieve those lower interest rates is that we have a different guarantee model within our capital structure.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much for asking that question. So I wanted to make sure, Jasmine, you did have all of your questions to ask, because if you do have other questions, please feel free to go ahead and ask them. We have about 10 minutes left. So.
Thank you, Lynn. I do have a few more questions.
Okay.
One of the things that I saw in the forms were, so I'm really coming from the context of a nonprofit. So Kevin, bear with me. Keith, bear with me from that perspective. One of the questions basically said the assets, right? It says list out the assets or check mark the assets that you have, but not assign a value, because it didn't ask, okay, how much does that have? But we have assets, but we also have liabilities. We have already taken loans against the assets that we currently have. How does that affect the loan, right? Is that a factor in terms of an underwriting institution making that determination? Or is that just that they want to know what assets and liabilities you have? I want to understand that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And in the context of the application portal, right, of what you saw there, what it's really trying to do, again, as I mentioned, there's no right or wrong answer, but it's providing that context that you're talking about to the potential lender who has to go under their own underwriting process. So there's like an other section that you can hit, right? So that when you do get matched, you can walk through what that looks like. Because at the end of the day, the answer to your question is yes. All things are considered within underwriting. However, their goal is to get you a loan, right? At the end of the day, they're trying to get you what you need. And so any of that, that information on not only the liabilities, but also the assets are always part of that conversation, right? Because if maybe there's a lower credit score, but they're high on another issue, they can mitigate some of that and still get you that loan, right? So it's really designed to just really understand the business, because every business is very different. Every nonprofit is very different, and how they're structured and what their risks and liabilities are. And so it's just, this portal is, think of it as a way to disclose what you can for us to match you with a potential lender that can be best positioned to help you out. And there's going to be more follow-up to really have that understanding. But can I say one piece will either get you the loan or not, or is the key component to underwriting or not? That's really up to the lender.
Thanks. Just a follow up to that, one thing that you had mentioned was really creating a statement of COVID impact. Mm-hmm. And as you can tell, a nonprofit really relies on funds coming from a community, and really that's a direct sort of can be translated into COVID impact, right? Because you're relying on donations or some funding, other funding sources. We've seen a drop of 35 to 40% in our funding over the years since COVID started. Is that sufficient impact for us to be, because what I'm trying to drive at is we were going to go and do some building improvements. And I know that was one of the reasons that you listed. We really would like to do that, right? But we don't have any funds left to do that, given the amount of funding that has been cut out of our sources. Is that a viable thing for us to apply for?
Yes, that's fantastic. Your example is perfect as to what we're looking at. Now, I'll just reinforce what you're saying. Personally, like I attend a lot of nonprofit fundraisers, luncheons, the annual, event that's really, for many nonprofits, that is their primary resource every year, right? That's the event. I go to the Wing Luke Museum and, support some of the local community organizers down there. That is it. And we know that those were impacted heavily. We know that even on the event side of putting that on, we've seen a dip in being able to really do those. The online versions are great, but I think we all know that they're not hitting the mark nearly as much as those in-person ones were too, right? So I'm just reinforcing what you're saying, which is spot on. That's a perfect example of how that would affect a nonprofit and showing that impact from COVID.
Okay, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, those are really great questions.
I've got a question.
Okay, please.
Yes, my name is Murtis J. Thompson, and I'm a person of color who's seeking a loan. And I was just wondering, has the success rate of people applying for the Flex loan been determined? What is the success rate?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the last numbers I saw, it was around 76 to 78% of all the loans went to BIPOC or women-owned businesses. So from our metrics, that's kind of hitting the communities that we're trying to get access to on many respects. So part of our goal in achieving that level of success rate is how we communicate this, right? It's attending Lynn's meeting today. Right. And really getting out to the community to make sure that folks are hearing about this. What you'll recognize about the Flex Fund is that it was not pushed out through the state and traditional pathways. That was very intentional. We wanted to make sure that we're reaching our communities where our communities are, right? So It's really making sure that we reach out to like Lynn's organization and others around the state, so that we're using that trusted, y'all probably heard of this before, but the trusted messenger approach, the community messenger approach, and really trying to see, can we make better impacts going that route? When you're a state entity, you tend to blast it from the mountaintop there. We all know the strength of some of the other, business organizations, that they just get hundreds and thousands of applicants right away, right off, like your bigger chambers around the state, a lot of those traditional pathways, if that's how you want to define it. What we learned through, actually, interesting enough, it's a great question, by the way. It was interesting enough, we learned in an early grant round, and we took an approach because we were seeing a lot of our emergency grant recovery funds were not hitting the mark. And early on, we tried a grant relief program that was called the Resiliency Grant. And it was only 20 million, but we took this approach of, hey, how do we as a state entity tackle the challenge of getting more businesses of color into receiving, resources? And what we were hearing was, how are we communicating it? How are they hearing it? How are our folks, do they trust the message they're hearing it from, right? And so we implemented that program to give it a test, give it a go, and really use that community messenger approach. and we had outstanding results from that. So when we were, the Flex Fund was built about 3 months later, and we used that test case study, if you will, to really be the backbone of how we are building this public-private partnership in this Flex Fund. And it is really leaning on our approach to our community messengers and trying to ensure that, you know, businesses of color around the state are hearing it from those that they trust so they can get access and go through our process.
Excellent. Thank you so much for asking that question. Do you have another question? We
Yes,
can
I do.
one more. Okay,
Yeah.
please.
So can you fill out the application, or is it available to be filled out online? And then what happens after the application is filled out?
Yeah, it's a great question. Really quick. So what you fill out online is called a pre-application. What that does is help match you. I'm just sorry, I'll use an example. I apologize. But say you apply, you're giving us a profile, you're giving the fund a profile of your business.
Right.
That profile then is used to match with multiple lenders in some cases. Sometimes you get 3 matches of lenders that can help you out. You get to choose whom you want to work with. And then that gets shared with the lender. So that kind of profile, if you will, that's created is shared with one of our CDFIs. They reach out to you and they initiate their process. So it's to get to know you a little bit more, a little deeper, understand. You know, to be honest with you, a lot of folks might put down $150,000, but once they understand what their real need is, a lot of times it's less. Or someone puts in 50,000, they realize actually I can use a little more, right? So they have a whole process to initiate that consultation with the business owner to figure out what do you need, can we help you, and they move forward from that point. So once it gets submitted, then you get a communication back from the lender.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Keith, for all of your answers. I hope all of this are going to be very helpful for those of you who are very interested in this particular Flex Fund. And also we will conduct additional information sessions and webinar in the future. So I want to ask that all of you who are already part of our network to continue watching for those news. And if you wanted to, have more questions asked, this is going to be available all the way through September, is my understanding, this Flex Fund. So you can take your time to study more about it and learn about it, and then apply for it if you like. And there's only $27 million that got used, and Keith just told us there is almost $100 million available. So do share the word with others who may be interested in this too.